The stadium was alive with energy, the crowd roaring with excitement as the top athletes of the year lined up for a highly anticipated exhibition match. Among the thousands of fans packed into the stands, there was a small section that stood out: die-hard supporters who had been following the team for years, each with their own unique stories and personalities. One such fan, Claire, sat comfortably in her seat, her jersey proudly displayed, cheering for her favorite team. She had always been a dedicated supporter, attending games rain or shine. Claire was not the stereotypical fan you'd expect. She was overweight, but that never dampened her spirit. She loved the game with all her heart, and nothing made her feel more alive than being part of the action in the stadium. On the field, Jason Hart, the star athlete and face of the team, had just finished warming up. He was in the prime of his career, a name known by every fan, a source of inspiration for so many. But as Jason scanned the crowd, his gaze fell upon Claire. There was something about her that caught his attention, and as he focused, his lips curled into a smirk. Claire was shouting with enthusiasm, cheering for him like any other fan, but to Jason, her size became the punchline he couldn't resist. "Look at that," Jason murmured to one of his teammates, pointing subtly toward Claire in the stands. "That's the kind of fan who needs to get off the couch more often." The team chuckled, and Jason's smirk deepened as he waved at Claire, exaggerating the gesture, mocking her in front of the entire stadium. The crowd laughed along with him, but Claire's heart sank. The joke stung, even though she tried to brush it off. She was used to people making assumptions about her based on her size, but this was different. This wasn't just some stranger making a cruel comment. It was her idol, the person she had supported for years. Jason, feeling emboldened by the crowd's laughter, continued his mockery for a few more seconds before turning back to the game. He never expected the fan in question to take it seriously, much less retaliate. Later that night, after the game had ended, the media rushed to Jason for interviews and soundbites, as they always did after a big match. His performance had been stellar, and his team had won. But this time, the media wasn't just focused on his skills on the field. They wanted to know about his interaction with Claire in the stands. A reporter approached him with a microphone, camera ready. "Jason, earlier in the match, you made a comment about a fan in the stands. Can you tell us more about that?" Jason grinned, clearly enjoying the attention. "Oh yeah, it was just a little fun. You know, everyone in the crowd is into it, having a good time. It's all part of the show." But the reporter wasn't done. "The fan you were mocking, Claire, she seemed to take it personally. Do you regret it?" Jason shrugged dismissively. "Look, it was just a joke. People need to lighten up. She was cheering like everyone else, and I was just having some fun with it." The reporter nodded, but there was a subtle hint of disapproval in their expression. Some fans didn't think it was funny. They've been posting online about it. Claire, in particular, has taken to social media to respond. Jason's eyes narrowed, realizing he might have crossed a line. But he quickly regained his composure, laughing it off. "Hey, it's all part of being in the spotlight. People need to learn to laugh at themselves." Meanwhile, Claire had been fuming since the incident. The laughter had hurt, but the fact that Jason, her idol, had mocked her in front of thousands of people made her feel invisible. The more she thought about it, the angrier she became. She had been an athlete in her youth, full of potential, but her journey had been different. Her body had changed over the years, but her love for the game and her spirit remained the same. She decided it was time to take control of the situation. She wasn't going to let Jason's mockery slide. So, Claire turned to the one tool she knew she could use, her voice. She took to social media, posting a video that quickly went viral. "Hey Jason," Claire said into the camera, her expression calm but firm. "I saw you had some fun mocking me during the game today. But I'm here to tell you that I'm not upset. In fact, I've got a little surprise for you. You see, I've always supported you, cheered for you, no matter what. But what you didn't know is that I've been training myself. I've been working hard, getting stronger, and pushing my limits. And now, Jason, it's your turn to face the real challenge." She paused, letting the weight of her words hang in the air. "I'm challenging you to a fitness competition. I'll train for it, just like you, and we'll meet face to face. Let's see who really deserves the spotlight. You in?" The video quickly garnered thousands of views, with fans showing their support for Claire. The challenge was bold, and the response was immediate. Jason's social media was flooded with messages, some of his own fans expressing disappointment in his behavior, others urging him to accept Claire's challenge. The next day, Jason was met with a firestorm on social media. His fans, once loyal, were now split. Some found humor in his mockery, but many were standing up for Claire, rallying behind her message of strength and resilience. It was clear that Claire had taken the high road, turning a moment of ridicule into a powerful statement. Jason, feeling the pressure from both the media and his fans, knew he had no choice but to respond. He posted a public reply. "Alright Claire, you've got it," Jason wrote, his tone more serious than it had been the day before. "I've never backed down from a challenge, and I'm not about to start now. You want a fitness competition? Let's do it. But just know, I'm bringing everything I've got." The day of the challenge arrived, and the stadium was filled with fans eager to watch the showdown. Claire, despite the nerves running through her, stood tall in the center of the arena, ready to show Jason and the world just what she was capable of. She wasn't just fighting for herself anymore, she was fighting for every person who had been mocked or overlooked. Jason, equally determined, stood on the opposite side, his athleticism on full display. The competition was fierce, with a variety of events that tested endurance, strength, and agility. But as the minutes ticked by, something unexpected happened. The challenge wasn't just about who was stronger or faster. It was about heart. Claire pushed through each round, showing resilience that Jason couldn't help but admire. As the final event approached, Jason realized that this wasn't a competition he could win just with physical strength alone. It was about respect, and Claire had earned it. At the end of the day, Jason was left speechless, not because he had lost, but because he had witnessed something powerful. Claire had shown the world that strength came in many forms, and true athletes weren't just defined by appearance, they were defined by their determination and heart. The aftermath of the competition was felt all over the sports world. Jason, who had initially mocked Claire, now found himself publicly apologizing. He recognized the importance of his words and how they had affected someone he had once admired as a fan. The public backlash was strong, but Claire's graceful response and ultimate victory left everyone speechless. Jason's apology wasn't just about his mistake, it was about acknowledging the real strength in those he had once underestimated. And for Claire, it wasn't about winning a competition. It was about proving to herself, and to everyone else, that no matter what others thought, she would always rise above. The days after the competition were filled with mixed emotions for both Jason and Claire. Jason had been humbled by the experience. He had underestimated Claire, and in doing so, he had learned a valuable lesson about respect, humility, and the true meaning of strength. While the public apology he issued was widely accepted, it didn't erase the hurt he had caused. But he knew that he had to make it right, not just with words, but with actions. For Claire, the aftermath of the competition was a whirlwind. She had proved to herself and to the world that she could face even the harshest challenges head-on. But she also realized that the competition wasn't about Jason anymore. It was about showing the world that no one should ever be reduced to a stereotype or mocked based on their appearance. The support she received from her fans and fellow athletes was overwhelming, and it gave her the confidence to continue pushing for inclusivity in sports and beyond. A few weeks later, Jason reached out to Claire, wanting to meet in person. He had been reflecting on the competition, on his behavior, and on what Claire had taught him. He understood that he owed her more than just an apology. He owed her a partnership, a chance to work together and use their platforms for something greater than just sports. Claire agreed to meet him, curious about what he had in mind. When they sat down at a small cafe, Jason was the first to speak. "Claire, I've been thinking a lot about everything. You taught me something I didn't expect. What you did out there, the way you handled yourself, it wasn't just about winning or losing. It was about showing what real strength looks like." Claire smiled, nodding. It wasn't about the competition. It was about proving that we don't have to fit a mold to be strong. "I think the world needs more of that message, especially in sports." Jason leaned in, his voice filled with sincerity. "I agree. That's why I want to ask you something. I think we can do something big, something together. What if we partnered up to create a movement, something that challenges the way people view athletes, regardless of their size, gender, or background. We could build a platform that celebrates every type of athlete and show people that strength is more than just what you look like. Claire's heart raced as she listened to Jason's words. It was everything she had dreamed of, a chance to make real change, not just on the court or in the gym, but in the hearts and minds of people everywhere. She had been pushing for inclusivity for so long, but with Jason's backing, they could make an impact on a global scale. "I'd love that," Claire said, her voice full of conviction. "I think it's time for people to realize that athletes come in all shapes and sizes. We can challenge the status quo and show that fitness, strength, and health are about so much more than aesthetics." Jason smiled, clearly relieved that Claire was on board. "We'll do it together. We'll use our platforms to amplify voices that have been overlooked and make space for those who don't fit the typical mold." "I'm all in." The next few months were filled with planning, collaboration, and determination. Jason and Claire worked tirelessly to create a movement that would resonate with people all over the world. They launched a social media campaign that encouraged athletes of all kinds to share their stories of overcoming obstacles, of defying expectations, and of proving that strength wasn't about how you looked, but about your perseverance and heart. They called it Strength Beyond the Surface. The campaign quickly gained traction. Athletes from all walks of life, from professional sports to amateur fitness enthusiasts, began to share their personal journeys. Videos and testimonials flooded social media, showing that strength came in many forms, whether it was overcoming injury, battling societal expectations, or simply pushing through the daily grind. For the first time, people began to see the power of inclusivity in sports. The campaign wasn't just about physical strength, it was about mental resilience, emotional endurance, and breaking free from the confines of what society deemed acceptable. A year later, Strength Beyond the Surface had grown into a global movement. Jason and Claire had spoken at conferences, appeared on talk shows, and had even collaborated with major brands to promote their message of body positivity and inclusivity in sports. Their partnership had become a beacon of hope for those who had been told they weren't good enough, strong enough, or fast enough. The impact they had made was undeniable. Jason had become an advocate for athletes who had once been overlooked, and Claire's business had grown beyond her wildest expectations. She was now not only known as a businesswoman but as an activist who had reshaped the conversation around fitness and body image. But the most rewarding part for both of them was seeing the change in the world around them. Women, men, and children who had once felt discouraged by the unrealistic standards of mainstream sports began to feel empowered. They realized that they, too, could be athletes, could be strong, and could be celebrated for who they were, not for how they looked. One evening, after a long day of meetings and events, Jason and Claire sat together, reflecting on their journey. "I never thought this is where we'd end up," Jason said, his voice filled with gratitude. "I thought it was just about sports at first. But now, it's about something bigger. It's about changing lives." Claire nodded, a smile tugging at her lips. "It's everything I've ever wanted. To show people that strength is more than skin deep. That every body is capable of greatness. And I think we've done that." Jason took her hand, his eyes full of admiration. "I'm proud of you, Claire. You've changed the world. We've changed the world." Claire looked at him, her heart swelling with pride. "We've both done it, Jason. Together." The movement continued to grow, inspiring generations of athletes who would never again feel like they had to fit into a mold. Jason and Claire had proven that strength was about far more than just physical appearance. It was about the heart, the determination, and the courage to keep pushing forward no matter the obstacles. And together, they had reshaped what it meant to be an athlete in the modern world. Months passed, and Jason and Claire's movement, Strength Beyond the Surface, had become a global force. From major media outlets to grassroots social media campaigns, the message was resonating with people of all ages and backgrounds. Jason, once known only for his athletic prowess, was now celebrated as a powerful advocate for body positivity and inclusivity. Claire, whose voice had always been strong, now found herself at the forefront of a revolution that was changing the way the world viewed athletes. But with success came new pressures. As the movement expanded, So did the scrutiny. Jason and Claire had become the faces of something much bigger than themselves. Something that, while inspiring, also placed them under constant public observation. One day, after an early morning meeting about a new collaboration with a global fitness brand, Jason and Claire found themselves sitting together in the quiet of their office. The windows overlooked the bustling city below, but inside, the atmosphere was calm, too calm. Both of them had been running on fumes lately, with barely any time to rest. Jason leaned back in his chair, his expression thoughtful. You know, sometimes I feel like we're on a treadmill that never stops. The movement is growing and that's great, but I feel like we're always playing catch-up. It's exhausting. Claire nodded, her fingers tapping against her coffee cup. I get it. We've built something incredible, but I can't help feeling like we're just scratching the surface of what's possible. And yet, every day, it feels like the stakes keep getting higher. We can't afford to let anyone down, not the people who are counting on us, not our followers, and definitely not ourselves. Jason sighed, his fingers running through his hair. We've pushed so hard for this. We've taken risks, made big decisions, but I'm starting to wonder if we've lost sight of why we started this in the first place. Is it still about making a difference, or have we become part of the system we were trying to disrupt? Claire paused, looking out the window for a long moment before responding. I think it's still about making a difference. But maybe we need to take a step back and remember the reason we started this. It wasn't just to build an empire, it was to change the conversation, to show the world that strength isn't about appearance, it's about heart. We can't lose that. Jason smiled, a sense of relief washing over him as Claire's words sunk in. You're right. We've got a responsibility, not just to the people who are following us, but to ourselves. To remember why we're doing this. It wasn't long before the pressure to balance their personal lives with their rapidly expanding platform began to take its toll. Jason's career was still going strong, but his team's success was starting to feel secondary to the growing attention and obligations outside of the court. Claire, too, found herself stretched thin, managing her business, the movement, and her personal well-being. One day, after a particularly difficult week of press conferences and meetings, Jason and Claire found themselves at a crossroads. The movement was gaining momentum, but both of them were feeling burnt out. The constant public attention, the expectations from their fans, and the ongoing demands of their own work were starting to blur the lines between their personal lives and their public personas. We need to take some time off, Claire said, her voice quiet but firm. I can't keep going at this pace. We need to reconnect with why we're doing this, not for the press, not for the followers, but for us. Jason looked at her, his expression serious. I've been thinking the same thing. It's been a roller coaster, and while I wouldn't change a thing, I don't want to lose sight of what matters most, us. Maybe we need to step away from everything for a while. Let's take a break, Claire said with a soft smile, just you and me. No interviews, no campaigns. Let's remember what's important. The couple decided to take a well-deserved break, planning a quiet getaway to a secluded cabin in the mountains. It was just the two of them. No distractions, no cameras, just a chance to breathe, reconnect, and focus on what had always been the foundation of their relationship: trust, respect, and love. For the first time in months, they found themselves slowing down. They spent their days hiking through the mountains, sitting by the fire, and simply talking about life, about their hopes, their dreams, and their next steps. It was a reminder that no matter how big the world became, they were always each other's anchor. One evening, as they sat on the porch of the cabin, watching the sunset together, Jason turned to Claire, his eyes filled with love. I think we've learned a lot over these last few months. About the movement, about ourselves, and about each other. Claire smiled, resting her head on his shoulder. I think so too. We've proven that we can make a difference, but we've also realized that it's okay to slow down. The world won't fall apart if we take a step back and take care of ourselves. Jason kissed the top of her head, his voice soft. You've taught me that. You've shown me that true strength isn't just about pushing forward, it's about knowing when to pause and recharge. And I think that's what we need right now. Not just for the movement, but for us. Claire looked up at him, her eyes filled with gratitude. I couldn't agree more. We've built something incredible together, but we can't forget the foundation it's built on. Our partnership. That's what matters most. After their retreat, Jason and Claire returned to their work with a renewed sense of purpose. They knew that the road ahead would still be filled with challenges, but they also understood that they couldn't keep going at the same pace without losing themselves. Taking the time to step back and reconnect had reminded them of the power they had together, not just as public figures, but as partners in every sense of the word. Together, they continued to lead strength beyond the surface, but with a new perspective. They no longer allowed the pressures of fame or public opinion to dictate their choices. Instead, they made decisions that felt right for them, knowing that their journey was not just about changing the world, it was about changing themselves too. The movement continued to grow, but Jason and Claire had found a deeper balance. They had learned that true strength wasn't just about the battles fought in the public eye. It was about the quiet moments of reflection, the willingness to listen, and the courage to slow down when necessary. And as they moved forward, they knew one thing for certain: the best part of their journey had always been the love they shared, and that was what would continue to fuel them for the years to come. After their time away, Jason and Claire returned with a sense of clarity. Their relationship had deepened, and they felt stronger than ever, both individually and together. The public attention on them had died down slightly, allowing them the space to refocus on their own lives. But that didn't mean the world was finished watching them. It was simply waiting for their next move. For Jason, the time away had given him the space to reevaluate his career. While he still loved the game, he realized that he didn't want his identity to be solely defined by basketball. He had always wanted to use his platform for something greater, but now, more than ever, he understood the importance of balance. Claire, on the other hand, had taken the time to recharge, but her passion for strength beyond the surface was reignited. She was eager to expand the movement further, to make it a global initiative that empowered not just athletes but everyone who had ever been told they couldn't achieve greatness. Together, they realized that they could continue to change lives, but now, they had the tools to do so more thoughtfully and sustainably. One afternoon, while Jason was reviewing some sponsorship opportunities for the next season, Claire sat across from him, typing furiously on her laptop. Her focus was palpable, and Jason knew that look, she was working on something big. "Hey, Jason said casually as he glanced up from his papers. "What's going on over there? You've been typing nonstop for hours." Claire looked up, her eyes lighting up with excitement. "I think I've come up with something really big," she said, setting her laptop down. "I've been thinking about expanding strength beyond the surface to include not just fitness, but wellness overall, mental, emotional, and physical health. We can't just focus on how people look. We need to start talking about all the ways people can be strong, inside and out." Jason raised an eyebrow, clearly intrigued. "So, you're thinking about a whole new direction for the movement?" "Exactly," Claire said with enthusiasm. "We already have the athletes and the fitness side covered, but what about mental health awareness, body image struggles, and even nutrition? We need a platform where people can get advice, share stories, and connect with others who understand the struggle of maintaining balance, physically and mentally." Jason leaned back in his chair, taking in the idea. "That sounds incredible, but it's going to be a huge undertaking. Do you think we're ready to go that big?" Claire smiled, the fire of determination in her eyes. "I do. We've already created something people care about, and now it's time to grow it. We need more than just a fitness community, we need a wellness revolution." The next few months were filled with planning, meetings, and brainstorming sessions. They worked with experts in mental health, nutritionists, fitness trainers, and influencers who aligned with the mission. The vision was to create an all-encompassing platform, a wellness hub that went beyond fitness, addressing the full spectrum of physical, emotional, and mental well-being. They launched their new initiative, Wellness Beyond the Surface, with a major campaign that included free webinars, online courses, and community support groups. Jason spoke about his own experiences with the pressure of fame and the mental toll it had taken on him over the years. Claire shared her own struggles with body image and the importance of finding balance in life, not just through physical appearance but through a positive mindset. The launch was a massive success, far beyond what they had expected. Their message resonated with thousands of people who had struggled with their own wellness journeys. Claire's vision had expanded, and it was clear that Jason's willingness to step out of his comfort zone and share his vulnerabilities had made all the difference. But as wellness beyond the surface grew, so did the challenges. There were still skeptics who questioned the movement's credibility, especially in the face of the mainstream fitness industry. Some accused Jason and Claire of diluting the message by focusing on mental health and self-acceptance rather than just physical improvement. One evening, after a particularly contentious interview, Jason sat with Claire in their apartment, the weight of the day heavy on his shoulders. "I don't get it," Jason said, rubbing his forehead. "It feels like the more we try to push this message, the more people want us to just talk about fitness. They don't get it. They don't see the bigger picture." Claire, ever calm, placed her hand on his. "It's not about what others want, Jason. It's about what we believe in. We've always said that strength isn't just about how you look, right? We're challenging a system that's been in place for decades. Of course people are going to push back. But we can't stop now." Jason sighed, the frustration evident in his face. "I know. But it's hard when it feels like the world is against us." Claire smiled softly, pulling him close. "The world doesn't always have to understand. As long as we do, that's all that matters. We started this because we wanted to make a real difference. And we are." Jason looked at her, gratitude flooding through him. "You're right. It's just, sometimes the noise gets overwhelming." Claire squeezed his hand. "That's when we take a step back. We breathe, we recalibrate, and we remember why we're doing this. For the people who need to hear our message. For those who don't feel represented. For those who are still struggling to find their place in this world." Jason nodded, his resolve strengthening. "All right, let's keep pushing." Together, the movement continued to grow, but with each passing day, Jason and Claire found new ways to balance their personal lives with their mission. They became more vocal advocates for mental health awareness, body acceptance, and wellness. They began to partner with schools and organizations, offering free resources to people who had been overlooked by traditional wellness communities. One day, while attending an event for Wellness Beyond the Surface, Claire was approached by a young woman who had been following the movement since its early days. The woman's eyes were filled with emotion as she spoke. "I just wanted to thank you," she said. "I've struggled with my weight and my body image my whole life. But after finding your platform, I've learned that I'm strong, even if I don't fit the mold. I don't feel ashamed of myself anymore. And that's because of you." Claire felt a lump form in her throat. "Thank you. That's exactly why we started this. You are strong, and you should never feel ashamed of who you are." Jason, standing beside her, placed his hand on Claire's shoulder, his voice full of pride. "This is what it's all about, Claire. This is why we fight." Jason and Claire had proven that strength wasn't defined by appearance, but by resilience, self-love, and the courage to face the challenges life threw their way. They had created a movement that celebrated all forms of strength, empowering people to live authentically and to never let society's standards dictate their worth. As they looked toward the future, they knew that the journey was far from over. There were still obstacles to overcome, more voices to reach, and more lives to change. But one thing was certain: together, they were unstoppable. As Wellness Beyond the Surface continued to grow, Jason and Claire found themselves at a pivotal moment in their lives. Their movement had taken on a life of its own, and their platform had expanded into new areas: schools, workplaces, and even media outlets. The conversations around body positivity, mental health, and wellness were beginning to shift, but the road wasn't always smooth. Despite the growing support, there were still many who resisted the message they were trying to share. The fitness industry was a world built on years of established norms, and some were threatened by the changes that Jason and Claire were advocating for. Certain brands and influencers began to push back, questioning whether inclusivity and self-love had a place in the competitive world of fitness. It became clear that they were challenging not just the public's perception of strength, but also the very foundations of an industry built on idealized bodies and perfection. One afternoon, as they sat in their office after a particularly difficult meeting with a major fitness brand, Claire looked at Jason, her frustration evident. "I don't know how much longer I can keep fighting this." It feels like every time we make progress, there's someone or something pushing back against us. Why can't people just see the value in what we're doing? Jason, ever the optimist, leaned forward in his chair, his voice calm but steady. I know it's tough, Claire, but think about how far we've come. Every voice that pushes back only proves that we're doing the right thing. We're challenging the system, and systems don't change without resistance. Claire sighed, her gaze drifting to the window. I know. I just want it to be easier. I want people to understand that what we're talking about isn't a trend, it's a movement. It's about real people, real lives. Not about selling a product or meeting some arbitrary standard. Jason smiled, standing up and walking over to her side. He placed a hand on her shoulder, a gesture of support that always seemed to ground her. That's why we're here, Claire. To make them understand. We're not doing this for the short term. We're in it for the long haul. And every person we help, every life we touch, it's worth it. Claire nodded slowly, taking a deep breath. You're right. This isn't about making things easy, it's about making things real. We're changing the conversation. We've been in the spotlight long enough to know that it's not always glamorous, but what we're doing matters. Despite the internal challenges, the couple continued to push forward with their mission. They hosted community events, spoke at schools, and worked tirelessly to collaborate with influencers who aligned with their values. They partnered with mental health professionals, nutritionists, and athletes from all walks of life to create a holistic approach to wellness that resonated with their growing audience. But just as they began to gain more momentum, an unexpected crisis shook their world. It began as a small piece of gossip. An anonymous source had leaked an interview from a fitness influencer who claimed that Jason and Claire's movement was simply a marketing gimmick designed to attract a larger audience. The claim was that the focus on inclusivity was just another way for brands to make money off of body positivity, without actually caring about the well-being of those they were supposedly advocating for. The backlash was immediate. The post went viral, and Jason and Claire found themselves once again at the center of a media storm. They were accused of exploiting body image issues for profit, with some people questioning the sincerity of their message. Despite the overwhelming support from many fans, the accusations took a toll. The couple faced difficult questions during interviews, and the public's perception began to shift. Jason, ever the fighter, was the first to speak out, holding an impromptu press conference. His voice was steady, but the weight of the situation was clear in his eyes. I'm here to set the record straight, Jason began. Our movement has never been about profit or using people for a quick gain. It's about real change. We're not just talking about body positivity, we're living it. Every day, we face the challenges that come with being open and honest about who we are. And we've never once wavered from our commitment to this message. He paused, looking at the sea of reporters in front of him. We are not here to make money off of anyone's struggle. We're here to create a platform that gives people the chance to be seen, heard, and valued for who they are, not what they look like. And if you can't see the value in that, then maybe this isn't the movement for you. Later that evening, Claire sat in their living room, watching the coverage of Jason's press conference. Despite the tension in the air, she felt a sense of relief. Jason had always known how to speak his truth, and his words had solidified their stance. But Claire knew that the damage had already been done. The doubts had been planted, and the pressure was mounting. She needed a moment to reflect, and she took a walk outside, her thoughts racing. When she returned, Jason was waiting for her, his arms open for a comforting hug. We'll get through this, Claire, Jason said softly, his voice full of resolve. We've faced bigger challenges before. This is just one more step on the road. Claire hugged him tightly, knowing deep down that he was right. This wasn't the end, it was just another chapter in their journey. In the weeks that followed, Jason and Claire redoubled their efforts to prove the authenticity of their movement. They shifted their focus back to the people who had been supporting them from the beginning, those who understood the heart of what they were doing. They began spotlighting real stories from their followers, sharing testimonials from people whose lives had been changed by strength beyond the surface. They shared videos of athletes, parents, and everyday individuals who had found strength in their message, showcasing the true impact of their work. Slowly but surely, the public's perception began to shift back in their favor. The media storm died down, and those who had doubted their integrity were drowned out by the chorus of voices that praised their authenticity. Jason and Claire knew that the fight for their message would never be easy, but they had learned to stand firm in their values. One evening, as they sat in their office, now back in their routine, Claire turned to Jason, a gentle smile on her face. "You were right," she said softly. "We're not in this for the quick wins. We're here for the long haul, and we're making a difference. And that's what matters." Jason reached for her hand, squeezing it tightly. "Exactly. We've built something real, something that will last." They shared a quiet moment, knowing that while the road ahead would be filled with challenges, they were ready to face it together. Their movement had grown beyond a mission. It had become a legacy. The months following the media storm were a defining period for Jason and Claire. The pressure had tested their resolve, but their commitment to strength beyond the surface had only grown stronger. They had learned how to weather public scrutiny, and now, they were focusing on making sure their message reached as many people as possible. Jason's basketball career was thriving, and the support for his advocacy work continued to grow. On the other hand, Claire's vision for wellness beyond the surface was becoming a transformative force in the wellness and fitness industry. She had become a sought-after speaker, and her business was expanding rapidly. But as they continued to rise in popularity, they both began to recognize the need for deeper connections with the people they were trying to help. The movement was not just about being seen or heard, it was about making lasting change. One afternoon, as they sat in their office, brainstorming ideas for an upcoming charity event, Jason leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. "You know, I keep thinking about how much we've accomplished, and how much there's still left to do," Jason said, his voice filled with both pride and concern. "We've built this movement into something real, but it feels like the work is never truly done." Claire nodded, a thoughtful expression on her face. "I know what you mean. Every time we make progress, there's a new challenge, a new issue to tackle. But I don't think that's ever going to change. What matters is that we're still moving forward, still creating a space where people feel supported." Jason smiled, looking at her with admiration. "You've always known how to keep the focus on what matters. It's not just about the brand or the image, it's about the lives we're changing. And that's something we can be proud of." Claire's smile was soft, but her eyes were filled with determination. "I agree. And that's why, even though things feel overwhelming at times, I wouldn't want to do this with anyone else but you." Jason reached across the desk, taking her hand in his. "Me neither." As their movement continued to grow, Jason and Claire began exploring new ways to make a more tangible impact. They had been invited to collaborate with several high-profile organizations, but they knew that their focus had to remain on the people they were trying to help, the everyday individuals who needed their message most. That's when Claire came up with an idea that would change the trajectory of their work. "I've been thinking," Claire began, one evening while reviewing a proposal, "what if we created a program specifically for kids? One that teaches them not only about fitness but also about self-acceptance, mental health, and wellness from an early age. We could partner with schools, community centers, and youth programs to create a curriculum that promotes emotional and physical well-being." Jason's eyes lit up at the idea. "That's brilliant, Claire. Kids are the future, and if we can change the way they think about themselves now, we can shape the way society views strength for generations to come." They quickly began working on the framework for the program, focusing on developing age-appropriate activities that would teach children about body positivity, mental health awareness, and the importance of resilience. They called it Young Strength, and the goal was simple: to empower children to believe in their strength, not just as athletes, but as individuals. The launch of Young Strength was met with immediate success. Schools around the country expressed interest in implementing the program, and Claire and Jason made it their mission to provide free resources to communities that needed them most. They held workshops, hosted online classes, and partnered with athletes who could serve as role models for the kids involved in the program. The positive impact was undeniable. Children from all backgrounds, regardless of their size, gender, or ability, began to learn the importance of self-love and perseverance. The program's reach expanded globally, and Jason and Claire became symbols of hope for a generation that was growing up in a world where they could feel proud of who they were, no matter what they looked like. As the movement continued to flourish, Jason and Claire realized that they had become more than just advocates for body positivity. They had become catalysts for a societal shift. People began to see them not just as celebrities or influencers, but as leaders in a cultural revolution. They were helping to change the way people viewed health, strength, and success. But with all the positive change came inevitable resistance. There were still critics who believed that the movement was too inclusive, that it diluted the values of traditional sports and fitness. Some people even accused Jason and Claire of trying to enforce a new narrative on the public, one that wasn't aligned with the conventional ideals of athleticism and wellness. In a particularly heated interview, a prominent sports critic questioned Jason's commitment to the traditional standards of competition. "Jason, you've been a part of the NBA for years. Your career has been built on discipline, performance, and the pursuit of excellence. But now, with your involvement in wellness beyond the surface, it seems like you're saying that anyone, regardless of how they perform, should be celebrated. Do you still believe in the competitive nature of sports?" Jason, ever composed, looked the critic squarely in the eye. "I believe in competition, but I also believe in lifting people up, regardless of their size or shape. There's more to life than just winning a game or being the best at something. What really matters is who we are as people and how we support each other." The critic pushed back, but Jason's words hung in the air, and the public response was overwhelmingly positive. The interview quickly became a defining moment in the public's understanding of Jason's involvement in the movement. It wasn't just about body positivity or mental health. It was about recognizing that every individual had the right to pursue strength on their own terms, whether that was through sports, fitness, or simply learning to love themselves. One evening, after a long day of meetings and interviews, Jason and Claire found themselves sitting together, reflecting on everything they had accomplished. "We've come a long way," Claire said, a smile tugging at her lips. "And the best part is, we're just getting started." Jason nodded, his gaze thoughtful. "It's incredible to think about how much we've done. But what I'm most proud of is how many people we've helped, how many lives we've touched. That's what makes everything worth it." Claire leaned her head on Jason's shoulder, feeling the weight of the journey they had shared. "We've changed the conversation. And the world is listening." Jason kissed the top of her head. "Together, we're unstoppable." Jason and Claire had built a legacy, not just as athletes, but as advocates, leaders, and catalysts for change. They had proven that true strength was not just about appearance or ability, it was about the heart, the will to push through challenges, and the courage to stand up for what was right. And together, they would continue to make a difference, one step at a time. The success of wellness beyond the surface and young strength was undeniable, and Jason and Claire had become symbols of transformation, not just in the fitness industry, but in society at large. They had created a movement that resonated across borders, resonating with people from every walk of life. But as their influence expanded, so did the pressure to keep up with their newfound responsibility. The media, once skeptical, now adored them. Magazine covers, talk show appearances, and influencer collaborations followed. Yet, as their visibility grew, they found themselves pulled in different directions, further from the quiet moments they had once cherished. One evening, after a particularly exhausting week of interviews and charity events, Jason and Claire sat in their favorite restaurant, trying to reclaim a piece of normalcy. Jason stirred his water absent-mindedly, looking at Claire, who was busy with her phone, checking the latest messages from their team. Despite the laughter and conversations around them, the weight of their success was undeniable. "Do you ever miss it?" Jason asked quietly. "The way things used to be before everything got so big? Before we had so many people depending on us?" Claire glanced up, her fingers still lightly touching the edge of her phone. "I think about it sometimes," she said. "There was something peaceful about just being us, without all the external noise. But then I remind myself why we're doing this. We're giving people a voice who didn't have one before. We're helping people who felt unseen. That makes it worth it." Jason nodded slowly. "I know. It's just overwhelming sometimes, you know?" Claire smiled, putting her phone down and reaching across the table to take his hand. "We've both been stretched thin. But we have each other. We've always had each other." We'll find a way to balance it." Jason looked at her, his exhaustion mixed with a renewed sense of determination. "You're right. We can't let the noise drown us out. We've done too much to let it slip away. But we do need to find a way to take care of ourselves, too." As they continued their journey of spreading the message of body positivity, mental wellness, and strength beyond the surface, they decided to take a more proactive approach to sustainability in their work. They began setting boundaries around their personal time, leaning on their trusted team to take the reins on certain projects while they focused on ensuring their movement stayed grounded in its values. But not everything could be planned, and the world they had entered was still filled with unexpected hurdles. A few months later, while attending a prestigious awards ceremony for global social impact leaders, Jason and Claire found themselves confronted with a difficult situation. A popular fitness brand, known for its sleek, muscle-centric advertising, had launched a new campaign that subtly attacked movements like strength beyond the surface. The ads mocked soft fitness and promoted an idealized version of athleticism that Claire and Jason had spent years challenging. The campaign was all over the media, and their fans quickly began commenting on it. The backlash against the brand was swift, but Jason and Claire found themselves at a crossroads. Should they respond publicly? Should they call out the brand and add fuel to the fire? Or should they continue their mission in the same manner, focusing on positivity instead of conflict? Jason stood in front of the mirror in their hotel room, staring at his reflection. "I don't want to spend our time on negativity," he said to Claire, who was sitting on the bed, watching the social media responses pour in. Claire was quiet for a moment, deep in thought. She had always chosen a path of positivity, and she didn't want to get caught up in another battle. But there was a part of her that felt like this was an important moment, a moment to stand up and reaffirm what they stood for. "I don't want to play their game," Claire said, her voice steady. "But I also don't want to ignore it. We can't just stay silent and let this pass. We have a responsibility to show people that there's more to wellness than just physical appearance. If we don't speak up now, we're letting them continue to set the standard." Jason walked over and sat next to her, his hand gently touching hers. "What do you think we should say?" Claire took a deep breath, her mind clear. "We don't need to engage in their petty marketing wars. But we do need to remind people what we're really about, what we've always been about. It's not about us versus them. It's about creating space for everyone, no matter where they are in their journey." Jason smiled. "I'm with you. Let's do it our way." The next morning, Jason and Claire posted a joint message on social media. They didn't attack the brand or get dragged into the negativity. Instead, they focused on their core values: inclusivity, respect, and real wellness. At Wellness Beyond the Surface, we believe that fitness isn't a competition. It's not about perfection or meeting unrealistic standards. It's about finding strength where you are, mentally, emotionally, and physically. We embrace every body, every journey, and every person who wants to be the best version of themselves. We're here to support you, not to judge you. Our message has always been and will always be, your body, your rules. The response was overwhelming. Fans and followers from all over the world expressed their gratitude for Jason and Claire's calm, confident stance. The brand's campaign fizzled out as people began rallying behind the idea that true wellness was about acceptance, not competition. A few weeks later, Jason and Claire attended a global wellness conference, where they were invited to speak about their journey. The audience was filled with influencers, activists, and leaders who had been inspired by their movement. As Jason took the stage, he looked out over the crowd, his eyes meeting Claire's in the front row. He had always known that what they were doing was important, but standing there, speaking to a room full of people who shared their vision, he felt something deeper, a sense of purpose that surpassed any award, any accolade. "Today," Jason began, "we stand as part of a movement that's not just about fitness. It's about creating a world where everyone, no matter who they are or where they come from, can feel strong, valued, and worthy of love. The world may tell us that we don't fit the mold, but we are here to break that mold, to rewrite the story." Claire joined him on stage, taking his hand. "True strength isn't about what others think of you. It's about how you see yourself. And together, we're going to continue spreading that message, one person at a time." The crowd erupted in applause, and for Jason and Claire, It wasn't just another speaking engagement. It was a confirmation that they had made an impact that would last for generations to come. As they continued their journey, Jason and Claire knew that they were only scratching the surface of the change they hoped to create. They were prepared for the challenges ahead, but they knew that with each other by their side, they could face anything the world threw at them. The work was far from over, but together, they were unstoppable.